Travels. And now Thompson lets it. Thompson, that quick release. No, he could not get out of the 10 spot, though, as Klay Thompson.
You see this? This is what a player with 4 rings who just played a horrendous game looks like. This isn't just anyone who happens to have 4 rings to their name. Nope. This is the man so many people were crowning as the second greatest shooter of all time, only behind his superstar teammate and the three-point master himself, Steph Curry. But speaking of Steph Curry, this is what he had to say about his Splash brother.
To play, and that's okay. It happens. This is sports. It's unpredictable, and we've all been in that experience where you have amazing highs, and he's had those, and we've all had deep lows where, you know, you walk off the court and you're super hard on yourself because you wished it would have gone in a different way.
While Steph's being the great stand-up leader he's always been, I mean, look closely at him while he talks. That doesn't look like a guy who's too encouraged about what's to come for his team and, of course, the immediate future of his longtime teammate, Klay Thompson. With the lights being the absolute brightest, and after a season in which Klay saw some ups and a ton of downs, with criticism and people writing him off as washed, this was a make-or-break opportunity for Klay to prove to the world that he is still capable of being a bona fide star. Instead, Klay might have just played his worst game ever at the worst time. Unrestricted free agency, a fragile body, a mentally defeated game. Klay Thompson may have officially played his last game as a Warrior. 2012, the year LeBron James, the NBA's all-time leading scorer and a man in the GOAT debate, won his very first NBA title. Kobe Bryant led the USA to another gold medal. The iconic big three of KD, Westbrook, and Harden were making waves as the NBA's next dynasty. Hell, Justin Bieber was the most relevant name on the planet. Oh, and one other thing. This was the last year, the last time the trio of Steph Curry, Klay Thompson, and Draymond were absent from the NBA playoffs. 24-year-old Steph, 22-year-old Klay, and 22-year-old Draymond, all unknown kids on an improving but vastly glossed over Golden State team. No one could imagine who or what this trio would become just a couple of short years later, and no one could have even remotely imagined that this would be the trio that would go down as the single most winningest trio in the history of the sport. Fast forward 12 years later, and here we are. This will be the first postseason without the Warriors in a season where they had all 3 members of their dynastic trio healthy. But undeniably, there was one harsh theme to this season that reared its ugly head against the Kings the other night. All season long, it felt like this Warriors team was finally reaching its expiration date as a dynasty, with erratic and laughably bad behavior on the part of Draymond Green, and strangely awful play in significant stretches by Klay Thompson. But the difference between Klay and Draymond, well, aside from the fact that one can turn into a lunatic at any given moment while the other is mostly mellow, is that Draymond still makes an impact in many different ways, which allows his value to never drop below neutral for the team. But for Klay, we've seen this man drop 60 while dribbling the ball as many times as I have against NBA competition. We've seen this man go berserk and single-handedly embarrass an entire team in one quarter. And we've most definitely seen this man rise above pressure and play even better than Steph Curry in do-or-die games in the past. But to see him drop a donut in potentially his final game ever for the team that drafted him way back in 2011, that is something incredibly hard to digest. But we also have to take a step back and pin in a nutshell what this season has been like for Klay Thompson, and ultimately how it led to his possible downfall, dare I say, for good. See, when this season started, I don't know about you guys, but I expected Klay to step up another level from the season before. After all, 2022 to 23 was Klay's first full season in the NBA since 2019. Yes, 2019. And for a guy who missed nearly 1,000 days of NBA basketball, to come out and average 22 points on 42% from three-point range in almost 70 games played was, hell, incredible. A true testament to the literal warrior Klay is and has been throughout his career. And I figured, hey, if he did that at age 32, then he'll certainly play even better at age 33 with an entire offseason of full-speed training and preparation, right? Well, I was wrong, big time. See, there was something off about Klay this entire season. Remember when he came out of the gates looking like he'd completely forgotten how to shoot? I mean, bro couldn't throw the ball into the Pacific Ocean from the middle of the ocean. In his first 30 games this season, Klay had a whopping 13 games in which he shot the ball less than 40% from the floor. And he even went on some significant stretches throughout the season, scoring single digits and acting like he was playing for the other team. He was getting crucified in the media, and it began to really take a toll on him. Speaking of which, look, bad performances are inevitable. Heck, bad weeks, even months are sometimes inevitable. But maybe that wasn't the biggest issue with Klay this season. What if I told you the problem with Klay all season long wasn't exactly his bad play, as much as it was his bad, or I should say his troubled mindset? Less than 2 weeks ago, Klay came out and said he's looking to resign with the Warriors, but he said that sort of timidly, mentioning that his mental health will be a huge player in what he wants to do with his career next. Could that also mean that Klay is considering retirement? While retirement could very possibly be on the map for Klay, it is clear that this entire season was a mental grind versus all the outside noise about Klay's expiring contract and people asking if he's even worth getting the veterans minimum too. I know myself and so many others have been harsh on Klay throughout the year, but let's not forget about the entire background to this entire ongoing situation. This was a guy who was hands down one of the top 5 or 10 two-way players in basketball just 4 or 5 years ago. The Warriors' dynastic success was a testament to Klay's selflessness as the third scoring option and his ability to play both ends of the floor. He had never gotten hurt. There was an outside shot that Klay would have been on Steph's tail in pursuing that all-time three-pointers record previously held by Ray Allen. The thing is, we tend to forget how good a player once was in the peak of his prime. But the player, or Klay in this case, has not and will never forget how good he once was. Klay believed all along he could still be that player he was back in 2019 and even going back long before then. But when the season rolled around, Klay was hell-bent to prove people wrong, and in the process, he was exerting too much undue pressure on himself and only ended up playing worse than he could ever imagine. And once he began playing poorly, the media, fans, everyone all caught on and began criticizing him for it. Remember, it was just a couple of months back, Klay hit another rough patch in his shooting. And this time, he looked visibly hurt by his play, and you could clearly see that he was succumbing to all the talk and noise. Without a doubt, Klay's mental health has been a huge part of his struggles on the court. And while I'm not trying to compare this to extreme levels like what we saw with Ben Simmons, we now all understand how big the mental health game is for an NBA player and his performance out on the court. I don't think it's a coincidence that Klay suddenly started playing a lot better once he was moved to the bench in the middle of the season. In 14 games that Klay came off the bench in during this season, he averaged 20 points and hit at least 5 three-pointers in 8 of those 14 games. And remember, the second he came off the bench, he was vibing his way to a 35-point, 7 three-pointer game against the Jazz in mid-February. So why was Klay able to flip the switch? Because the pressure was temporarily lifted off his shoulders. He wasn't feeling the heat of living up to play star or even starter quality basketball, which was the absolute flip side of what we saw the other night. Klay was awful, sluggish, mentally and physically worn down. You could tell from the jump that he was not going to have a good game in the play-in against Sacramento. Unfortunately for Klay, the Warriors, and all of Dub Nation, the season is over and there won't be a 2024 postseason with Steph and company included. Man, that just sounds weird to say. But undoubtedly, big changes are on the way for the Dubs. And yes, the offseason overhaul could very possibly begin with the Klay Thompson situation. That being said, I do believe the Warriors will offer Klay a brand new contract, just not go anywhere near what he's made in these past few seasons. And with that contract will certainly come a changed role. If he's in the blue and white next season, he's going to be a full-time sixth man for the first time in his life. But for Klay's sake, he just might be best suited going elsewhere, even if it means a much lighter bag. See, playing in the Bay, fans and media will always compare him to the Klay from the past, the dude who had this very same jersey on that was lighting up teams with his right arm. But if he elects to take his talents elsewhere, it'll be a fresh start for a player dealing with some things mentally. No comparisons to the guy from the past, no asking whether or not he's still capable of being Splash Bro number 2. None of it. I mean, if he goes to a team like the Lakers, which I'm sure his dad would love, Klay's role would really be regulated to his strengths without much of any spotlight on him. But above all things, sadly, but realistically, the Klay of old is gone and isn't coming back. Well, unless Klay was pretending to be bad all this time and he has a devious revenge season planned. But in all seriousness, does Klay's poor season mean he deserves slander and unjust criticism? Not at all. He's still a Hall of Famer, a 4-time champ, one of the top 5 greatest shooters ever. He just needs a change of scenery and a fresh start, and I have no doubt in my mind he can be a key piece on a championship caliber team even as he approaches his latter 30s. So, stay or go? What should Klay decide for his future? Are you riding with Klay and supporting him, or are you completely out on him after that play-in performance? With a wild offseason ahead for Dub Nation, let the drama begin.